Hello everyone and welcome back to my art channel. Today is the first day of October, which for many people means Inktober. Obviously this piece that I'm working on here is not an Inktober piece. I actually did this a few weeks ago, almost a month ago I want to say. Not quite. It was pretty early in September, but that's not what I wanted to talk about during this video. I should have written down notes for myself, but I did not. Anyway, so it is October, and I do want to attempt Inktober this year. I'm obviously not going to be making a video about every single day, and as of recording this, it's about 11 a.m. and I haven't done my Inktober piece for today yet. But the day's still young. I have time. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about this painting that I'm doing. As you could see at the beginning, I had already started out by blocking out the atmospheric perspective in the landscape. That was a little something I learned from the Skillshare class I took for this, not sponsored. But something that I want to get more into is creating backgrounds and landscapes, because that's something that I've kind of been lacking a little bit in my artwork. I mostly focus on portraits and figures, and I want to do more work in the environments. And this was sort of a concept that I had had for a while, this sort of forest scene with these particular characters in it. And I knew for that I would have to, focus on the forest a little bit more than just the characters. So I did a little bit more work on that. Then another thing that I wanted to highlight was the figures that I put in the drawing. And you can probably already tell I'm doing my little fox deer creature. And then the figure in the cave is this bear girl that I came up with about a year ago. And she's sort of a metaphor for artistic hibernation, which some people refer to as art block, but I prefer to think of it as a hibernation. And so I thought a bear character was fitting for that. And right now she's sleeping, but I do tend to personally go through a bit of a hibernation phase during the summer and then wake up during the fall. And now that we're in October and fall is in full swing, I feel like it's time for me to wake up. And so this month, during October, for the Inktober challenge, I wanted to use these characters and creatures that I've created as sort of prominent figures in my Inktober drawings. Specifically the bear girl, her name is Lita. In my mind, that's a diminutive of Ursula, which, Ursa, bear. Anyway, I just thought that was a cool little thing to throw in. And yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with that. I apologize for this voiceover. It's kind of all over the place. I guess I'll talk a little bit about my process for this one, because I used a few different techniques than my normal technique that I tried to approach this painting a little differently than I've been approaching my digital paintings lately. And I kind of wanted to go back to basics with it, because I've gotten very into like the Kyle T. Webster brushes and like his real oil brushes, all those fancy sets. And I kind of just wanted to go back to the basics with this and just use a hard round brush with varying levels of opacity. And I do like the way that turned out. And I do think it's good to kind of go back to the roots in digital painting and not always rely on these fancy brushes. and just use the basic techniques in these programs, and especially liquefy. Obviously, the liquefy tool is something that I rely on heavily, and it's something that I definitely miss when I'm doing anything traditionally. And that was the end of that thought. But it was really nice to just go back to carving out the shapes with this hard round brush rather than, trying to find exactly the right brush to create a texture that I wanted, or like smudge it around or whatever. And, obviously I used the smudge tool for this. That's also a very handy digital tool that you don't really get with traditional media. And it was really nice to not really have to focus on choosing the right brush, to rather just use that plain round brush and see how you can, I can still create these textures and still, make the hair and the shines and the shapes and all that. I think that was good for me to kind of go back to that. And so I think it'll also be good for me to try Inktober and go with that medium of, traditional inks. Something I did struggle with here, and that has been a constant struggle throughout my artistic journey, is proportions. I think the proportions of the bear girl are a little bit off. Her head is a tiny bit big, and I think that was mostly my fault for not finding a good reference for a bear. Usually for her, I use a bear reference because that's what the majority of her figure is. And I can just sort of improvise the face because I've gotten pretty good at faces, if I do say so myself. But I couldn't quite find a picture of a bear sleeping in the position that I wanted, so I just sort of fudged it and made her body in shadow mostly so that it was kind of hidden. And I mean, I think the perspective of where the cave is, I think, probably her body would have been mostly hidden anyway. So it might have been to my advantage if I had changed that so that her body was mostly obscured. But oh well, I didn't do that. I still think it turned out okay. Another thing that I did with this painting that I don't normally do is I started with the black and white just to establish the values and then added color later. And that's something that I've never really done before. I don't typically go in with black and white first. I usually just shoot straight for color because, it's digital, so I can easily change whatever. But for this, because there were so many parts and pieces, and we had the landscape and then the figures, and I just wanted to kind of simplify things for myself before I made them more complicated with color. And I think that helped me a little bit in creating the scene. There are definitely a few things that I would change if I were to redo this. I'd probably, the far background, I would probably do something different. I'm not entirely sure what, but it's just kind of and I think I could have added more to it. But yeah, I definitely think I got the fox deer better than the bear figure, just because I used an actual reference. It was a lot easier to find, you know, deer references than a bear reference in a specific pose. I'm still kind of exploring the concept of this character, of this creature. I'm still kind of exploring like how much of it is foxy and how much of it is deer-like, and how do we blend these? And I think that's something that will come in time. It's still fairly new. It's still a fairly new concept, but we're getting there. And so here I'm just adding the finishing touches of lighting and color. And again, this is something that I typically don't do with my paintings, with my digital paintings, but I think it worked out pretty well. Especially just like using just, you know, popping the colors in select areas rather than through the overall thing. I think that worked out pretty well. Oh yeah, so at the very, very end, I did try and like fix that far distance background, but I had already flattened all of the background layers, and so it was hard to manipulate that. And if I were to go back, I probably would have kept that far back layer separate, just so it was a little easier to manipulate. And oh well, you know, regrets. We can always do this again later. Maybe in a few years I'll try a paint this again challenge or whatever. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Right now, it's looking a little gross because I turned off the lighting effects. But here's the finished piece. Let me know what you think. And going back to Inktober, is anybody else doing Inktober? What's going on? Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you liked it, like the video, hit that subscribe button, all that stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye.